Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lighten Up Podcast with Lauren Pauley, your invitation for living on the lighter side of life. Today, we're going to continue with our roadmap to resiliency conversation all about well-being and entrepreneurship. This is part two. Part one last week just kind of built the bridge as to what is resiliency and why is it needed. And also just acknowledging the ups and the downs of this journey that we go on when we're trying to get a business going and trying to get a creative voice out in the world. What it takes to actually have a solid foundation so that you feel safe and secure. And from there, and only from there, can your creativity flourish. Today, we are going to dive into mental health is a journey. It is not a destination. This is one of my favorite topics, I've got to say, even if I'm not talking to entrepreneurs, just in general. If you haven't read my multi-award-winning book, The Other Side of Bipolar, you'll see through my own experience, ups and downs. And I love being able to reflect that back to people, whether you're going through a mental health challenge, you're actually diagnosed with something, or you're just struggling to take care of yourself day in, day out and handle the pressures of the world. There is the biggest lie out there that once you hit stability, once you hit happiness, once you hit peace, you got to hold on to it and it will never go away. It's like the ultimate destination. And once you get there, everything should just work. I figured out what I need to take care of myself. I figure out my business. I figure out what I want to be in the world. I figure out my place. And from there, everything should just, hum and drum along. And that is not the reality of life. Life is ups and downs. You're going to get plot twists left and right, whether they're an internal plot twist where something is, wait a second, I didn't realize this is what I was doing. You have an internal reckoning where maybe you went down a path and realize that wasn't the path you wanted to go down. And sometimes it's an external plot twist where the people in your life or the life circumstances just get shaken up a little bit. That is what all of us go through. So I feel like having this idea in our head that so many of us have that once we reach a certain point, it should just stay that way is what leads to most of our downfall. Because what inevitably happens when you hit a certain point with your mental health, with your well-being, with your business, you think, I finally got there. And then what happens when you get thrown off of that, your axis gets turned a bit. Well, what would have been a little bump in the road usually turns into something much bigger because you feel like all that progress you made has been lost. So I wanted to open up this conversation, especially to entrepreneurs out there, because we are testing our mettle more than other people. Putting yourself out with the personal brand business or having a creative, unique offering in the world, you put your heart and your soul into it. And so much of our personal identity and how we're feeling gets wrapped up in that. Not just in kind of how we build the business, everything that we put in, our day-to-day management of that. It's important. We'll touch on that this episode, but also how it's received in the world, if it's received at all, So having this resiliency, and again, this 7-part series that I'm doing is really building these foundational blocks for you of how we get that solid foundation of resiliency. This is a key. I want you just to take a second and actually look at where you may have felt or been through an experience of, I got there. I was at the finish line. I got there. And the next thing that happened that threw you off of that. For me, with my mental health journey, it was definitely a struggle to reach that stability point. And then I fought like hell to hold on to it. And in fighting like hell to hold on to it, you can feel the energy of that. It just gets very tight and very constrained. And the creativity and the ability to kind of experiment and go outside of the box and maybe mess something up along the way, but learn from it just wasn't there. It was something that once I had reached that stage, I was so invested in holding on to that a lot of possibilities that could have led to something different were shut down. It took a while to open up and to relax a little bit and to allow myself to have that experimental nature. And when you're an entrepreneur, guess what? You're going to have to continue to experiment over and over and over again. Once you hit one peak of success, the industry changes, social media changes, the way your customers are thinking about you change. Your creative nature and what you want to say in the world inevitably changes as it evolves, as it should. So if you're not able to relax a little bit and to know that, yes, you've reached this pinnacle that you were aiming for, it's amazing. But if you loosen the reins and allowed yourself to open up and experiment, it's kind of a needed thing to push yourself to the next level. One of the biggest lies, bigger than mental health and well-being being a destination, fixed destination, not a journey, is also that our life is like that as well. Energy, all of the things in life, everything always changes. It's the one constant, and we all know that. But at the same time, we don't live that way. We think that everything should always be the same. And so holding on really, really tight to certain things, it's just us being conditioned and embedded for that. Being able to actually have this thing where we know everything's going to change. We know our own moods are going to go up and down. Our own stressors are going to go up and down, that life is going to throw us curveballs left, right, and center. And as we are stepping out into the world and the industry changes, we're going to have to navigate those hurdles too. Keyword there, navigate. So how do you do that? If the road to entrepreneurship is parallel to the road of mental health and wellness and well-being, they are both roads. And there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs and different terrains that we have to cross. If you think of this imagery, it actually really, really assists the ups and the downs, the twists and the turns, and the forks in the road, right? Being able to think of it that way as a road that we need to navigate, you need active tools that actually help you do that. So for me and my new ebook, I think I talked about it last episode, goes into this in more detail with more tips, but I want to really focus today on self-awareness as self-care. Because for me, that is the number one thing that I use to navigate all of the roads in my life. Whether I'm actively thinking about my business, I'm actively thinking about my own feeling, my own internal state, or I'm thinking about different aspects in my life, my relationships, my money, whatever. All of those things together lead to your well-being, right? So having this idea of self-awareness as self-care is huge because, again, it's not a fixed thing. I remember having a mini meltdown. I've had bigger meltdowns, but I had one when I was out shopping when I was 20 with my boyfriend. We were house hunting. We finally found a house and then we were trying to decorate it. And it was just such a stressful time. He was a very anxious person. So trying to deal with his energy as well was a lot. We were on our fifth or sixth store at this point. I was so tired. I was over hungry. I mean, all of my little triggers were getting pushed. And I just remember standing in the middle of IKEA, which is always a very loud place to be. And I was like, I can't function. I can't move a foot in front of the other. I just feel so overwhelmed right now. The thing is, at that time, is I didn't know how to take care of myself in every moment to lead up to not having that meltdown. Or at least if I led up to that point, I could work myself out of it in a functional way. The only thing I knew how to do was to meditate. So what did I do in the middle of IKEA? I sat down, closed my eyes, and started to do some breathing and some meditation. Not a bad thing. Those are two of the tools that I use a whole bunch in my own self-care. But it wasn't really a functional thing, right? When we think of self-care, most of us think about a yoga class. We think about a vacation. We think about a spa day. We think about having a conversation maybe with someone who loves us. We think about events and experiences, not necessarily having this whole breadth of a tool that we can use moment to moment. It's way more practical and way more functional. If you know how to take care of yourself in any moment, in any given situation, things get a lot easier. So really and truly, that's what this is actually building towards. I had that little meltdown. How did I work my way out of it? I had to sit down and meditate. then I felt okay. I was able to at least get up, function, and exit the store. In times past, whenever I felt that overwhelm, like I was going and speaking at an event and there were multiple speakers and kind of a really funky energy with it, right? It was one of those pay to be on the stage events. So most of the people in the audience were actually other entrepreneurs wanting to pitch their business and get a video of themselves, not necessarily people who were wanting what you offered, which you may find yourself in, because that's a lot of how we get our nuts and bolts in our business built up, is buying a stage every now and then to get in front of a camera. Or in my case, I loved having the experience of it. It was a muscle building activity. So for me, going into that, it was the same situation I had in IKEA, where there was just so much energy, there was so much noise, and I could feel the nerves of everybody around me. You know, us entrepreneurs, especially if we're in a heart-centric business or soul-centric, we are very empathetic, we're highly sensitive, we're very in tune. So being in a room full of a lot of people like that, we all kind of were pinging off of each other, and not the nicest kind of way. But it was a fascinating experience for me, because I could feel that coming on, and I could feel the overwhelm coming and the stuckness coming, and this like, I need to leave the room, but also I kind of can't leave the room. So where do you go when that starts to hit? Well, I have more tools now. I didn't need to sit down and meditate. I took some deep breaths and I got very mindful with myself. Number one, I know myself, and this is a journey I'd invite you to go on too. I know myself now. I know I'm aware of other people. I know I am highly sensitive to the environment, and a lot of the things that are going through my mind and my body actually don't belong to me. They are my little meter, if you will, my little antenna going up for things around my environment. So knowing that, I was able to take a beat, take a breath always, and go, okay, we know we're aware. Let's look realistically at this situation. Everybody here is nervous. Everybody here is a newbie. Everyone's in their head thinking about how they're going to pitch, and no one is really in a receiving mode, which is weird. Let's just call it weird. It is. So being able to name it for me has always been one of the greatest ways to cut through the noise, so that I have that navigational ability. Again, I kind of think of myself as this little antenna that goes up and starts to feel the room, feel the expectations. And then from there, I have a more clarity on what's going on, and I can find myself easier. So I invite you to start playing with these really basic tools. One, I want you to get really aware of how your antenna works. Do you get triggered by things that people say? Do you get triggered by being in a room full of people who are already anxious and you feel it as well? What are the things that actually, when you have this overwhelm, the stuckness, the stress, any of that sensation, that may make you think that you're losing your mental wellness, your emotional wellness, and a sense of yourself? Could you actually start to put a pinpoint on, so that when the noise comes, you can do what I did? I'm not going down this road. Take a breath, take a beat, and let's get really practical and really real about what's happening here. These self-awareness strategies, they have a whole breadth of them. There's tons of systems out there in the world that actually talk about this and teach it. You can go through my old podcast episodes. I've got about 250 that dive into this topic. But I think it is so important in this particular setting of mental health as a journey, not a destination. Because if I'm thinking of it as a destination, once I hit it, there's no need for me to do anything else. I should be able to maintain it. That's a lie. If I don't think of it as an ever-flowing journey that I need to navigate, then I'm never going to develop these navigational tools that I can use in any given moment. And most importantly, if I'm not thinking of it as a journey, I'm going to be even more rocked when I hit a crossroads and I don't know where to go, or I hit a stuck point, or I go downhill in some way. Something happens internally or externally. I'm going to take it harder, thinking that I've lost something that I worked so hard to gain. And we all do this in our lives. Every person does this. But entrepreneurs who are out in the world, pushing their creative edge, pushing their authentic voice, being able to actually push your metal to the point where you're really, really, really having to manage a lot and you have a lot riding on it. It just ups the ante even more. So I invite you to dig into this, really get practical, make that list, figure out what your triggers are. I will say I think it's going to be episode number 6 in this series is going to go really, really deep into triggers. So that will be very helpful. That's coming up in a few weeks. But in the interim, just start getting really familiar with how you work and how you work in different environments. Maybe think back to like my story with IKEA. Think back to your life when you got really overwhelmed, really stuck, really angry, whatever it is to seem to be the trigger that really gets you like, oh gosh, I've lost something. Take note of it. Look over the scenes of your life. When did that happen? Why did it happen? What were the things that led up to it? And maybe if you could think about everything you know now, what would you have done differently? Those are the keys to carry you forward. Again, it is not about reaching a static destination. Success is not that. Success in my book is this intermingling of mental, emotional wellness where you feel good in your own skin. You feel confident and comfortable, and you have your expression and your outward expression into the world. Those come together with your creativity and offering your uniqueness like nobody else can. These two things, your mental being and your creativity, blend together for a unique kind of success that nobody else can point you towards. And that's what we're all navigating right now. How do we get to a place where we're actually happy and we feel fulfilled? I am so excited to have you on this journey. Again, this is episode number 2 of the Resiliency Roadmap that goes with my new ebook called Resiliency Roadmap. You can go ahead and download it down below. It's a free download for you to explore. Chapter number 1 is all about this topic, and there's some different techniques and strategies. Also, some self-reflection questions that may actually help you along this journey to get to know yourself and how to care for yourself better. Our next episode is going to dig into energy dynamics, one of my favorite conversations. So stay tuned for that. It's coming up in a couple of days. Download the free ebook. And as always, I will chat with you soon.